Hey, what's up everyone? Welcome to 90 Day Fiancé latest news. The hospital hallways were quiet except for the soft sounds of machinery beeping and the occasional footsteps of nurses dashing by. In one part of Mount Sinai Medical Center in Miami, a recognizable face to millions of reality television fans lay in a hospital bed, wounded, bandaged, and battling to keep his spirits intact. Alexei Brovarnik, the adored husband from 90 Day Fiancé and father of 3 small children, was in the news overnight after being in a horrific automobile accident yesterday afternoon. Alexei was driving by himself from Hallandale Beach, where he lived, to Miami, where he worked, when calamity struck. His automobile started to veer out of control near a busy crossroads and then crashed forcefully into a light post on the side of the road. The crash was so bad that it crumpled the front of the car and hurt Alexei's arm, left him with large bruises on his torso and cuts from broken glass that hurt. Witnesses stated he seemed to be fighting the brakes, trying to slow down the automobile, but it was too late. Emergency workers got very quickly and took him out of the driver's seat. He was still awake but clearly in pain. An ambulance took him to the hospital right away, where specialists confirmed how badly he was hurt. The accident was scary, even though none of them were life-threatening. Alexei has been in the hospital since then. Doctors said he would need to stay there for at least a week for monitoring, treatment, and rehabilitation. His fractured arm was put in a cast, his body was bruised, and he was watched all the time to make sure there were no concealed problems. His wife, Loren, has been by his side virtually nonstop. She was so startled when she got the call that she raced to the hospital right away. Friends of the couple said the situation was heartbreaking. Loren held his hand tightly in the emergency room while physicians worked around him, and tears streamed down her face. She had a hard time calming her concerns, even after being told he was safe. Even behind the antiseptic hospital confines, you could see how close the couple was. Nurses saw Loren hanging at his side, moving his blanket, wiping hair off his forehead, or reading out letters of support from friends and fans. Even though Alexei's broken arm and ribs hurt all the time, he tried to make Loren laugh when he could. This cheered her up and reminded her of how strong he was. Their 3 kids stayed home with Loren's parents, who kept them safe from the awful truth of their father's health. Loren assured them throughout video conversations that Daddy is resting and will be home soon, all while trying to look brave. But after the calls were finished, she would often break down because she couldn't handle the thought of what she had almost lost. Inside the room, life settled into a delicate rhythm. Nurses checking vital signs, physicians changing treatment regimens, and Loren staying up late to watch over him. The calm hours were the hardest since the hospital was less busy, and the reality of the tragedy hit like an unwanted shadow. Loren told her friends that she constantly thought about the subject. What if it had been worse? Outside the hospital, the couple's plight turned into a public drama. The news of the tragedy spread swiftly online, and fans and other cast members of 90 Day Fiancé sent waves of support. There were a lot of hashtags and prayers on social media, and castmates said kind things about each other in public. But popularity also brought attention, with others guessing about their private problems, which made things even worse for the already distraught family. Doctors kept telling Loren and Alexei that the road ahead would be hard but doable. Alexei would have to go through weeks of physical therapy and pain that wouldn't go away, but his outlook was good. He was thankful in a humble way for the gift of life itself. Alexei, who was in the hospital, said briefly that he recognized how lucky he was. He said in a low voice, "I'm lucky. It could have been a lot worse. I'm glad I'm still alive and can be there for my wife and kids. That's what counts." The ordeal was a reminder to Loren of how easily their bliss may be taken away. She relied on Alexei's strength and promised to be his strength in return. She stated, "This has been the most terrifying thing we've ever done. But I know we'll be stronger in the end. Alex is my rock, and I'll be his now and always." The story isn't done yet. Alexei is still in a hospital bed, and the woman who has been with him through every step of their public trip is still watching over him. Every day brings little wins like less pain, the prospect of getting well, and the hope of going home. Fans are waiting outside the hospital for that moment. But for Alexei and Loren, the headlines and rumors don't matter. What matters is love, healing, and the fragile, wonderful gift of being together. The second night at the hospital was quieter than the first, but the Brovarnik family still felt uneasy, like a shadow. Alexei was lying on a heap of cushions with his arm rigid in a cast and sling. The bruises on his chest were getting worse, turning from dark purple to blue. Every breath still hurt, and every movement reminded him of the crash that almost killed him. The monitors around his bed flickered and hummed regularly, a constant reminder that his body was being observed, examined, and tested. Loren sat next to him in a chair, her knees crossed and her tired face showing it. Since the accident, she hadn't eaten much. Her hands were always moving. She was playing with the edge of a blanket, adjusting her phone, and stroking her temples as if attempting to keep the heaviness that was threatening to take over her at bay. But even when she was really tired, she never took her eyes off of Alexei for long. Of course, he could see that she was tired. He always did. "You need to sleep, babe," Alexei whispered quietly, his accent showing how tired he was. His voice broke a little because it was dry. Loren instantly shook her head and said, "I'm fine. I'll go to sleep when you get home. I don't want to go to sleep and wake up and—" She stopped talking and pressed her lips together as tears filled her eyes. With his good hand, Alexei reached out and lightly brushed her arm. "I'm not going anywhere. I swear." But the words, even though they were kind, couldn't make him forget the wrecked automobile or the sight of his blood-stained shirt. The fact that they had come so near to disaster weighed heavily on them. The next few days were all the same, with regular hospital visits, people coming to see Alexei, and indicators that he was slowly but surely getting better. The nurses changed his meds to keep the pain under control and told him to sit up and move a few paces down the hall. At first, it hurt a lot. Every motion hurt his wounded ribs and bruised muscles, but Alexei pushed through it, determined not to let the accident get him down. During these brief walks, Loren walked next to him with her arm out, as if she were ready to catch him if he fell. Seeing him move, even slowly, made her feel both better and worse. She was proud of how strong he was, but she didn't like how weak his body was. Loren read out loud the many notes from admirers on her phone at night, when the hospital was silent. "We're praying for you, Alexei. Stay strong, Brovarnik family. We love you all." The compassion of strangers gave them courage, even though it often felt weird to have their private suffering on display for everyone to see. Alexei still felt better knowing that people cared. When Loren read him a note from David and Annie that said, "Heal quickly so we can eat together again," he chuckled quietly. These memories of their bigger TV family helped them feel better in the hospital, which was very empty and sterile. On the fourth day, Loren's parents brought the kids over for a short visit. It wasn't easy for Loren to make the choice. She had been torn about letting them see their father in a hospital bed with bruises and bandages. But the kids had been anxious at home, wondering over and over again where their dad was. Their small voices infused the sterile air with warmth as they walked inside the room. At first, the eldest person hesitated and his eyes widened when he saw Alexei's cast. But as Alexei smiled and reached out his good hand, the youngster carefully got onto the bed and hugged him. He murmured, "I missed you, Daddy." Alexei's eyes sparkled as he kissed his son's head. "I missed you too, friend." The younger kids clutched to Loren, not sure what to make of the machines and tubes. But gradually, their curiosity won out over their anxiety. Their innocence broke through the gloomy mood as they bombarded Alexei with questions. For a short while, the room was full of laughter, and the accident didn't seem as bad. Loren lingered behind after the kids went, her feelings all over the place. She dried her eyes, torn between being thankful and the pain of what might have been. Alexei took her hand again and squeezed it gently. "They need us to be strong," he said softly. "I know," Loren said quietly. "I don't ever want to feel that kind of fear again." As the week went on, Alexei's health slowly became better. He could sit up longer, walk down the hall longer, and even accomplish tiny things on his own. But it was tougher to get over the emotional stress. In the stillness of the night, when the pain had lessened but sleep was still far away, Alexei kept going over the accident in his mind. The sudden loss of control, the sound of metal crushing, and the feeling of helplessness when he realized what was about to happen. Even though he didn't say anything, Loren knew it. She could tell by the way his eyes would wander, and the way his jaw would tense up when there was too much silence. She tried to get him back by reading him humorous fan comments or telling him anecdotes about the kids. She wanted him to remember that there was a life outside the hospital and a house waiting for him. One night, after she made fun of him for milking the sympathy, when he was unwell, he laughed, and it sounded sincere, even if it was rough. He said, pointing to his bruises, "If this is milking it, I never want to milk again." The jokes made things less serious, and for a moment, they were just Alexei and Loren again. Husband and wife, partners in love and craziness. As the week went on, people got more and more excited about his release. Doctors told them that he was on the right track to getting better, but he would require weeks of rest and therapy at home. Loren started to be ready in her head by making plans for the kids, meals, and how Alexei would need to change things because he couldn't move around much. She felt better just thinking about him finally leaving the hospital. But leaving also meant going back into the public, where the accident was not just their private pain, but also a tale that fans, reporters, and critics all spoke about. Loren knew they would be asked about it, expected to offer information, and maybe even be filmed for a future TLC update. Even in times as private as these, the stress of public life was too much. But when she looked at Alexei, whose eyes were tired but hopeful, she realized what was most important. The rest of the world could wait. For the time being, they were focused on getting better and being grateful that he was still alive. Alexei said the same thing on their last night in the hospital. He said to Loren while holding her hand, "I don't want this to define us. I simply want to go home, be with you and the kids, and move on." Loren put her forehead against his and said, "That's all I want too," her voice breaking. The Brovarnik's time in the hospital, however short, had a lasting effect on them. There was a lot of fear and thankfulness, as well as a lot of tiredness and strength. They had to deal with sleepless nights, difficult recoveries, and the pressure of being in the public eye. But they also found strength in love, in the smiles of their children, and in the fact that life, albeit fragile, had given them another chance. As the first morning of discharge drew near, Loren packed up the little things they had brought to the hospital room. She looked around the room, the bed, the monitors, the clean walls, and felt a strange mix of relief and fear. The hospital had been scary, but it had also been a haven to stay alive. She thought they could handle it because Alexei was with her, even though she was going into the unknown. Alexei moved slowly, making a face as he tightened the sling around his arm. "Are you ready?" he inquired. "Ready," Loren said, her voice firm even though she was crying. And together, they got ready to leave behind the scariest week of their lives. They would take with them not just the wounds of the disaster, but also the memory of what it meant to really survive and love without holding back. This gossip is over. If you liked the video, then give your opinion in the comment box and stay with us by subscribing the channel. Thank you.